going on, family? If you read the title, you know what we're here for today. We're here to do something very different, but also it's something I've been a little bit nervous for, if I'm being honest, because to all of the subscribers that we already have, all of the people that are returning to watch this video, you know, I'm pretty keen on going in depth and talking about mental health topics and just the human struggle, the human condition. I love talking about and understanding different points of that, but this is always something a little bit different about being vulnerable enough to open up a certain part of yourself, because for one, it takes courage, but two, it takes a sense of peace with the situation to be able to talk about it. And if you read the title, you already know what we're talking about. If you're watching this video and if you're sitting here looking with me, if you're in the room with me right now, first of all, I want to say thank you for clicking on the video and coming to share this celebration with me. But for the people that don't know, today's a special day. As you're watching this video, I've officially made it a year free from the addiction of pornography. Now, you know, it's always been a huge debate amongst people about, like, is that a true addiction, or is something that's that deep you couldn't fight the urge to? First off, everybody's different, so I won't fault you for not having an understanding of it, but I want people to always acknowledge that people's vices and people's addictions are just as heavy and important to them as yours are to you. So never judge anybody for overcoming whatever it is they're dealing with. I think we should all come from a place of encouragement and just allowing each other the room and the space to be authentically who we are, to be authentically proud of our accomplishments, no matter how insignificant they may seem to you personally. But I feel like God was pulling at my heart. It's been maybe about the last month or two. I've been talking to Janae a lot about this. I've been talking to close friends just about the thought I've had of doing this video. And to be honest, I was a little bit anxious because it's letting the world into something that's a little bit different, something I don't too often speak about, but I feel like it's important because something that I don't want to be hypocritical on is something that I give advice to a lot of people about is your testimony isn't for you. Whatever you go through in your life is meant for you to share your story and talk about what you had to deal with so it can make the transition easier for the next person that might be dealing with it. So I feel like every time I try to worm my way out of something that I know I need to be doing, or sharing a testimony, or sharing like a real vulnerable talking point, God always constantly just, every time I try to turn around, he grabbed my head and be like, nope, 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 you're going to come right here and do this video. So I'm excited. And, you know, first off, I want to take a minute to just invite God into the room. So, you know, my personal belief is I believe in God. I'm a Christian, and I don't judge anybody for their personal beliefs. That's just what I believe in. But I just want to take the time to, first of all, say thank you for everything that you've done. I want to let you know how much I appreciate all of the trials and all of the storms that you put me through, because it authentically made me more in tune and more comfortable with who I am as a man. I want to invite you into this place. I want you to cover me. I want you to continue to give me the courage and the bravery to be able to share my story. And I pray that you're able to open the ears and hearts of anybody out there listening to me that may not be comfortable enough to share their story with the world, but they're struggling, and they're struggling hard. I just ask that you give me the strength and the discernment to be able to speak my words and be able to touch their heart. All I want to do is spread the message of love, strength, authenticity, and family. That's the biggest thing I want to promote here. But I just want to invite you to this place with a spirit of gratitude and a spirit of just thankfulness for everything. All the good times, all of the bad times, and for this moment precisely. So thank you again. I just wanted to come to you for a moment of gratitude. And once again, I appreciate you, because none of this is possible. Life isn't possible. Everything we accomplish is not possible without you. Thank you for everything. Amen. Now, I guess it would make sense to kind of go back to the beginning. So for me personally, I got exposed to pornography like really young. I would like to say the first time I seen it, I might have had to been like 9 or 10 years old. But I feel like as I got a little bit older and puberty came in and just like a general interest in the opposite sex came into my mind, it got a lot more aggressive, and I feel like it's something that, let's be honest, you don't think something is serious until you try to stop. And I'll get to that in a minute, but just to share a little bit of it, maybe around the time I was 12 or 13, I started getting really heavy into it. So to kind of give some background on that, I struggled with it for almost 15 years. Like, it's been a long, hard battle. And to be honest, for the majority of that time, it wasn't like it was an active thought or a process to step away from it, or I didn't even look at it as an issue because the way we're raised, boys will be boys. And this video isn't just for men. I want to take the time to be able to talk to not just men, but also women out there that may be dealing with the same struggle. Because when I was going through my period of trying to step away from it, I watched a lot of different content from a lot of different YouTubers that were pouring their heart out on their channels. And it wasn't all men. It was women that were talking about them actively fleeing lustful thoughts or fleeing the addiction to pornography or whatever it may be. But yeah, it was something I struggled with for a very long time. And I think the older I got, the more it kind of made me anxious, if that makes sense, because it's one of those things where the older you get and the more aware you get about who you are and your situation, you get more cognizant about the things that you allow into your mind. And it makes you feel thoughts that you might not have felt as a young boy or a young woman or whatever it may be. I feel like I really started to have the thoughts of wanting to be able to step away from it when it got to a point where 14 to 15 years later, I'm still at a point where I'm living with my then girlfriend. We weren't even engaged or married yet. I was watching it every single day. Like, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get a moment alone to be able to watch it. It'd be times where I rush home after work because I've been thinking about it all day, or I wait until I'm home alone on my days off and Janae was at work and I just wanted to be by myself. It started to make me feel like a creep, like it got to a point where I was watching it 2, 3, 4 times, 5 times, sometimes a day. And for physical reasons, that could be too much work, but it's like when you really step back from the situation, I started to get real self-conscious. And the reason why I say that is because maybe I should go back to the beginning. I think I started to think more about what the root cause was, what the root cause of it was. What was it that made me feel so attached to this thing? What made me feel like it's something that I needed in my life? And what transition made me feel like it was a vice in itself? Like, what made me feel like all of a sudden this is the wrong thing to be doing? So I kind of felt like around the 2022 going into 2023 and towards the end of that year, it was a very tough time. Mentally, for me and my wife, we were going through a lot of things. And to be transparent, it was a lot of conversations, not just amongst each other, but individually, like talking to ourselves. But later on, as we continued to dive deeper into conversation and communication amongst us, we got to know each other better than ever through those times. But around that area, it was rough. It felt unbearable. There was a lot of suicidal ideations. This is being full transparent. There were a lot of thoughts of just the fact that I felt as though I didn't add any value to the world. I felt like a coward. I felt like a creep. I just felt less than a man because I felt like it wasn't strong of me to be reliant on something like this, but also just the personal storms that I was dealing with. I had to figure out a way to be able to keep a grip on life, because I had an airy feeling that if I didn't get a grip on everything that was going on in my life and grab the reins of my own situation, whilst also having a growing trust for God, I just had an airy feeling that I wouldn't make it much longer. And it was a scary time, to be very transparent with you. So because of that, over the course of the last year and a half or so, I got real in tune with my roots. I was raised in the church. When I was a kid, I was raised by my grandmother, and she constantly kept me in church. She kept me in activities that kept me out of situations that could have ended me in a lot of trouble. So for me personally, I'm my mother's only child. So I grew up rather secluded, not in the way of she did it that way or my grandmother did it that way. It was just, I grew up on my own. I didn't have any younger siblings around me that I could like give attention to or play around with or be angry with, fight with, whatever the situation may be. So it was just something where as I grew up, I just had to learn to cope with the fact that I always felt alone. And when I was younger, my grandmother used to always take me to church. But, as a kid, you don't really appreciate the lessons and all of the stories that are talked about in the Bible. You hear it, but you're not truly listening to what it's trying to teach you. Because something I have learned is it takes you growing up and going through your own things in life to be able to appreciate a lot of different lessons that you learned from people that have come and gone. Like, if I could go back to those times, I would be very intentional about having conversation with my grandmother, hearing more about her stories, learning lessons from some of the things she learned, just even getting a feel of what it was that led her to the life that she chose. Because one thing I always knew when she passed, when I was 14, the biggest thing that stood out to me is that she wasn't afraid. She always had a big sense of peace about her, because my grandmother she was beautiful. She had a huge presence about her, and everybody loved her because she cared for everybody. She would open her door, open her fridge, and open her heart for anybody that needed any type of love. She took me in. But to try to get more of a firm understanding of what led her to that life would have been beneficial with me looking back on the situation. But over the course of the last year and a half or so, I wanted to get closer to that again, because once she passed, I distanced myself from the church. Not to say I blamed the church for it or anything, but it just didn't feel natural without her, because I didn't have my own personal reason for having a relationship with God, or so it felt. But over the course of this last year or two, I learned just how heavy life can get. I've learned how heavy it feels, how much God puts you through those storms, puts you through those seasons of trials and tribulations to help strengthen your character. I'm sorry, yo, I don't know what's going on, but he puts you through those storms to be able to help strengthen your character for this exact reason. So you can be able to share your situation, be able to share your circumstances with other people. And I just knew I couldn't do it by myself. I gave it everything that I had as a man. I gave it everything that I had as an individual. I knew I needed something bigger to lean on. But with a relationship with God comes a spirit of conviction that comes over your life. A certain level of mindfulness comes with it, because it lets you know everything in your life that that's not right. You need to let that go. And because it's impossible to live two different lives, you can't want to deepen and have a strengthened relationship with God, but also want to have one foot in the world. And what I mean by that is everybody has worldly temptations, worldly pleasures, things that you want to do. But when you build that relationship with God and you ask him to help rebuild your mind, you ask him to step in and speak over, put his hands over the situation, you can't pray for things like that and not expect him to make major moves in your life. Things will change that maybe you haven't been comfortable with changing. Because to be transparent, I wasn't comfortable with the transition of stepping away from porn. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel natural. It was everything that I've known. And the older I got, I started to understand the reason why it became such a vice. When I was growing up so lonely, I was by myself all the time. When I was a kid, my grandmother was too old to be doing a bunch of things with me, and my cousins and family and etc. They all had their parents to go home to, so it was just always me and my grandmother. And I think I kind of fell into that world because it felt like something that filled that void in my life. When I felt lonely, or I felt sad, or I felt angry, I watched porn. And it felt like in those moments, it made everything better. But like as I got older, those feelings deepened. When I felt depression now, instead of just feeling, ugh, I'm having a bad day as a kid. When I got old and started going through real things, when I argued with my wife, when I felt lonely, when I was angry, if we argued, if it was anything that was bothering me, I took those feelings and went and found a video that made it feel better. And I felt like I kind of got to a point where I knew I couldn't have both. I couldn't have a good relationship with God and be confident in the fact that I know I'm changing and becoming a better man if I continued on the same path that I was on. And I felt like it wasn't just like one of those things where I was just one day like, ugh, I'm too good for this. But I felt like God sent it through messages that resonated with my heart, because it was about around the time that I knew I was going to try to quit. That was around the time that God put it on my heart that I was ready to marry this woman. So when I came to the decision that I knew I wanted to propose and I wanted to be a husband, I knew I had to get myself together, because with watching that stuff and getting so engulfed in that world, as a lot of you have known, and through a lot of the research that I've done, I've come to understand a lot of the chemical changes that it takes your brains through. It gives you false senses of dopamine. It gives you things that make you feel happy. It gives you those feelings of peace and satisfaction for the moment. But like any other drug or any other vice, it only lasts for that moment. And it'll never be quite what it was the first time. So you're constantly chasing that same high. You go there for every emotion. You trick your brain into feeling like you need it. And that was a dangerous part. And to be honest with you, I was a little bit afraid of some of the thoughts that it started to put on my mind. I felt like the spirit of lust jumped on my back really bad. And I felt like I was incapable of being content with being happy with just myself or being happy with just one woman. To give a few examples of some of the thoughts that it made me feel, just first of all, thoughts of inadequacy. It got to a point where I wasn't comfortable with people. Like I got so engulfed in that world and I was diving so deep into it that I had a lot of trouble being able to have face-to-face conversation. Eye contact got hard. Conversation got hard. Resonance, being able to come one-to-one and have a heart-to-heart with somebody became difficult because I didn't feel genuinely connected to anything. It became a point where it was hard for me to be around people and look at people without thinking about that. And it was like that made me really anxious. It can put a lot of scary thoughts on your mind that make you very uncomfortable in the moment, because you know you better than that. And when you develop that spirit of conviction, it's important to always remember that that's not you. The thoughts that take over your mind, that's the lust, that's the devil trying to jump in and be able to break down those barriers and wear you down to a point where he can use you and manipulate you to spread his messages around the world. And I think that's what made it so important for me to be able to step away. For about a solid month or two, honestly, for about a solid few weeks, I'll say that. I just came to a point where I just knew it was time for a change. If I was going to get married, if I was going to be the man that I knew I was destined to be, I knew I had to let this go. It didn't feel right because I knew I loved this woman, but I also knew it wasn't ever going to be enough if I continued on the same path that I was on. It made me feel distanced from her. It made me feel like I wasn't worthy of having love from a woman, because when I'm around other women, I can't help but look at them and have sexual thoughts. I can't help but look at them and be like, yeah. I can't be content with where I am and what I want my life to be if I always have one foot in on the other side. I knew that if I wanted to make that change, not just for her, but for me, I wanted to feel better. I wanted to be confident. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to be sure who I was as a man. And so the journey began. I started looking at a lot of YouTube content that I thought would help me. I started reading a lot of Bible devotionals and scriptures and listening to a lot of stories that were applicable to the situation, even if it may not be in direct format, but stuff that was applicable in helping you understand that you don't have to be a slave to anything. And I want to put like some of the biggest scriptures that helped me through just getting started. For all of the people out there that feel like you're having a hard time stepping outside of it, you're having a hard time getting away from it, I just want to be here to encourage you and let you know that you're strong enough to do anything. Nothing has hold on you to the point that you can't shake it off if you make the decision, the intentional decision that you want to be better, that you want to step away, you want to stop living in this life. You can do it. And these are some of the scriptures. I'll put them on the screen too so you can see it. I'll put it right here. One of the biggest scriptures that stuck with me, and I read it every day, and it gets me pretty much emotional, is Romans. Was crazy. So the biggest one was Romans 12:2. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. When I read that the very first time, I think I was doing a Bible plan that was built around getting away from porn. And that one was like a constant thing that kept coming up, that same one. And I'm one of those people that I have notes full of scriptures that encourage me on a day-to-day, because I need to be constantly reminded and I need to be constantly humbled by situations. And there's no book that's more humbling than the Bible. When I read that scripture, it gave me power because I understood that that's not me. And having this addiction and being stuck in this circumstance is not of God. He didn't make me to be timid. He didn't make us to be fearful. He didn't make us to be afraid to live our lives. So anything that we learned came from the world. And you have the potential, you have the strength, and you have it inside of you to be able to acknowledge that, no, that's not me. I'm better than that. I can do what I want to do. I can be my own man. If I trust God and allow him to come in and step in on a situation, the battle's already won. I want to allow my mind to go back to those places where I felt so low that I felt as though I didn't even want to be alive anymore. That's not your thoughts. That's the devil trying to get in there and talk to you. He know that you're weak. He know that you're not feeling good about yourself, so he wants to manipulate you. That helped me in a huge way. A big one also was Romans chapter 6, verse 16. It said, don't you realize that you become a slave to whatever you choose to obey? You can be a slave to sin, which leads to death, or you can choose to obey God, which leads to righteous living. Just having those moments of knowing that whatever it is you're dealing with, whatever your vice is, when you intentionally choose that thing, when you know better, because the older you get, when you learn better, you know better, and when you know better, you should want to do better. So when I got to that situation where I read that and I understood that you're a slave to whatever you choose to obey, do I want to say I'm a slave to lust? Do I want to put out there that I'm a slave to digital women, to digital, this isn't even a real thing. So when you kind of step outside of it and look at what it is you're doing, you understand more and more every day that this isn't real. How could I be a slave to something that I created in my own mind? This is what makes me happy. This is what brings me peace. You start to feel bad for yourself because it's honestly sad. When you step away from it and look at the circumstances, it's really weird of you to be doing this. But That's also not to say that I want to criticize or push away anybody that's struggling with it now, because as I said, it was a beast that stuck on me for damn near 15 years. I just want to come here to encourage you and let you know through my personal experience that because of God and his mercy, I've been able to make it to a year without it, with no relapses. And it might sound strange, but you know, when you going through those phases, you like to tell yourself, I don't have an addictive personality. That couldn't be me. That's weird to be focused on something like no. But you have to humble yourself and realize that no man is above temptation. Nobody is above the deception of the devil. Nobody's above any of those things. And I remember the day I was here with Janae. My mother was here. It was Thanksgiving. And this was the first time I really felt comfortable telling her about the struggle that I've been having. I just opened up and told her everything. We didn't even have furniture in the house yet. We sat on this floor. We had a blanket out. And we were just having conversation after my mom left about everything that's been bothering me. I told her about my addiction. I told her about the frequency and how serious of a problem it's become. Now, to somebody who that isn't their vice, I completely respect the fact that not everybody has the same issues and not everybody deals with the same things. But what I appreciate most about her is she didn't make me feel less than because I was being vulnerable about what my issue was. She didn't say, well, it's not that serious. It's only this, blah, blah, blah. She sat there and let me talk. She let me get it all out. And she helped me understand that whatever decision I was going to make, she was in full support of. She wanted to be there for the journey with me instead of making me feel less than because I was dealing with something that felt bigger than me at the time. And in that moment, I just closed my eyes and I thanked God, because I knew that one of the biggest reasons was, one, to get my mind back on track and feel more comfortable in my ability as a man. But also I knew that if I wanted to marry this woman, I had to make a difference in myself. I had to change. I had to step away from thoughts that were going to eventually lead to me stepping out of my relationship. They would eventually make me feel like this wouldn't be enough for me. And I felt those feelings brewing when I was around other women. I felt uncomfortable because I looked at them and I wanted it. I wanted to be a part of the world. I wanted to be out there immersed in everything that I thought I was missing. And I knew that I couldn't go into this next phase of my life with those feelings on my heart. I wanted to be vulnerable and let her know exactly what it was that I was dealing with. And it was difficult because everything that I was seeing, Bible plans, videos, everybody said you need accountability. You need to be able to tell somebody what you're dealing with, because it won't be something that'll be easy for you to step outside of on your own. And it scared me. For the weeks leading up to the decision I made that day, it scared me because I was afraid of being judged. I was afraid of somebody looking at me as less than, because I was dealing with something that I didn't know everybody else had an issue with. One thing about addiction is very deceptive to the mind. It makes you feel secluded and puts you in a box. It draws a line in the sand around you and makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. And that's the most dangerous thing. That's why you guys who subscribe to the channel and people that watch us regularly, the most common theme that I push is having a spirit of community. If you guys notice that now, it makes more sense. It's all full circle. A spirit of community, because I want everybody to know that you'll never be the only person dealing with anything. You got to thank God every day for the fact that there is community, the fact that you have the ability to speak, the fact that you have breath in your lungs, the ability to walk, the ability to change your mind and do better than what you were doing yesterday. That's a huge thing. There's a lot of people with heartbreaking but heartwarming testimonies of what they made it through. Because once upon a time, there were times where people felt like they would die before they could get out of their situation. So I just want to let you know that you're not in it alone. I've been there. And don't think just because you step away from it is easy. I thank God and I'm grateful every day because I make the intentional decision every day to be better. I make the intentional decision every day to not do it. It's gotten to a point where it feels good to be able to open up my phone and not worry about closing tabs because I don't want anybody to hear what I've been watching. It feels good to be able to type things into my Safari page and it doesn't have any memory of when I was watching that. That's strength in itself. It makes you feel complete. It makes you feel the progress that you've made, because that's a part of yourself that you don't have to be attached to anymore. You'll always be familiar and you'll always remember those times because it was a significant part of my life. Me at 27, that was my issue for 15 of those 27 years. It just feels good to know that I'm making it to the other side. And I don't take any credit for it. I think around that time, just to wrap it up, and this is the last things I'll say, some of the stories that kind of opened up my heart around that time were for completely different reasons, but reasons all in itself that I understood. I heard the message through the story and I felt it deeper than I would have before. Stories like Jesus in the wilderness, when you had him fasting and being out there just cleansing himself, and the devil coming to him with different layers of temptation. Like, you know, with him coming there and feeling darn near defeated, you had the devil that'd come and he be like, you know, if you are the son of God the way that you say you are, you should be able to make your own miracles. I know you're hungry. You've been out here for this long and you haven't been eating. How about you turn that rock to bread? I just want to see if you are who you say you are. And in those moments when that temptation comes into your mind, it's easy to be able to convince yourself like, yeah, it's just it's just one more time. I don't feel like it hurt anybody. But just the stance that Jesus took stood out to me. Him saying, I don't have anything to prove to you. I know what my sole purpose is and I know what I'm fighting for. I don't have to do anything that you ask of me. Bye. Or him trying to come to him with a spirit of defeat and attacking his character. Like, you say that you have a purpose in the world, but all of these people, I have control over them. They all deal with their own issues and they're all going to praise me one day. But Jesus rebuking him and letting him know that I don't give any validity to anything you have to say. You're a liar. I don't trust any words that come off of your tongue because I know the purpose that my Father sent me here with. Get away from me. I don't believe it. You're lying. I don't want to hear it. Having those themes in that story encouraged me to know that I have that strength in me. I have that running through my blood. Jesus paid the ultimate price for our sins, for us to be able to be better than we've ever been. He gave his life for us. And I understood with that running through me, I have the strength to not only lean on that character and lean on that lineage, but to be able to step back and say to myself, I don't have to do anything I choose not to do. I get to choose to be the man that God designed me to be. I get to choose the destiny that he put in place for me. And it made me feel empowered. Reading stories about Solomon, who we all know is the son of David. Now, this was the wisest man to ever live. The wisest king, the wisest person ever to live. And we know through the story of David and just reading the Psalms, he wasn't a perfect man, but he was a man that understood the importance of being after God's own heart. The person that understood that I'll never be perfect and I'll never be to the level of what I feel like I should be. But I know who I need to lean on. I know what message I need to believe in. And this was his son. Watching the fact that he asked God personally for a level of discernment and a level of confidence that will make him a wise king the same way his father was. God appreciated and respected that humbleness and blessed him with a wise mind beyond his life, beyond anything that anybody's ever seen. He had a lot of situations that proved that, you know, even through your strength of mind, we all fall short because temptation attacks everybody. This was a man that couldn't get out of the way of his own lust. Solomon, being the wisest man he knew and having the relationship that he had with God, couldn't step away from everything that God told him to stay away from. This man had 1,000 wives and concubines. He fell in love with women that had him building altars to praise false gods, altars to to give praise to things that were outside of what started him on this path, what got him to where he is. He forgot who he was because he fell so deep into the temptation of having everything that the world had to offer without remembering you don't need to have everything as long as you have a relationship with God and genuine love around you. You feeling like you have to partake in everything that's going on in the world would be your destruction. Just reading those stories, the stories of Samson, the stories of the confidence that was given to Gideon, just all of those stories gave me a lot of strength and a lot of perseverance, because on this day last year, after having that conversation with my wife, I just quit that day. I made the decision that after today, I will not partake in this anymore. I'm letting it go. I'm giving it all to God, and I'm just trusting the fact that He'll get me through it. Did I know it would work? No. But I had confidence that I could trust that He would make it work. I had confidence that when I made the decision and was intentional about staying away from something, He wouldn't put anything on me that I couldn't deal with. I understood that if I wanted to be the man I wanted to be, and I wanted to continue to grow in my life, I just got a full storage. I just know that this message is powerful, and I just wanted to take the time to be able to share this testimony with y'all. I didn't mean to get long-winded, but I'm really proud, and today is a celebration. It feels good to know that through God, I've been able to have the strength to do something that felt like a Goliath in my life. It was a giant, and it was something that held me back for a very long time. Am I perfect now that I stepped away from it? No. Do I not still have my days? Of course I do. I think about it often, and it's not something that you just step away from and I'm better than that. No, I know that I'm better than it, but I still recognize that it's not nothing to play with. I don't toy with it. I don't put myself in circumstances that could not help. I don't put myself in circumstances or situations that could aid to having a relapse. That's the only reason I've been able to go this far on my first try of being able to step away from it. Not because of me, because of Him. He gave me the strength to be able to be better, the strength to be able to have self-awareness and understand that I wanted to do more with myself and make that decision to do the more. And I'm beyond proud. I'm proud of myself, and it feels good to know that there's something I decided. I wasn't forced into it. It's just something God put on my heart, and I knew that it was the right move. So the last scripture I do want to share with you is 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. It says, the temptation in your life is no different from what others experience, and God is faithful. He will not allow the temptations to be more than you can stand. When you are tempted, He will show you a way out so that you can endure. That's a lot of what we talked about in this video. And I just wanted to read that because I want you guys to stay encouraged. You know, even if it's something that you're not prepared to talk about in an open forum like this, you know, I have my social media in the description box. Feel free to reach out to me if you just need words of encouragement, or if you just want to talk back and forth about some of the journey and what it's been for you. My DM is always open to anybody that's seeking any type of help, any type of just heart-to-heart back and forth, because I'm not perfect. I can't give you anything that God can't give you, but I can give you a sense of community. So feel free to reach out to me in my DMs if you want to just have conversation. But if it's something that you've dealt with and you feel comfortable sharing, or something that you've overcome, share your testimony in the comments, because, you know, I like to always turn the comment section into a place where our family can come together and know that we're going to share our war stories together. And this was just one of mine. The battles have not been won. The journey's far from over. I still have a lot of growing to do. I still want to be better than I am right now. I've got my queen. I've got my relationship with God. I want to be able to do more with that. And the biggest thing that I've learned in the last few months is I had to learn to be content with where I am, while also I had to learn to be content with where I am in my life, whilst also in the pursuit of more. Just because You want better for your life doesn't mean you shouldn't love the life that you were blessed with now. It's a blessing to wake up every day. It's a blessing to have my wife. It's a blessing to have my mother still breathing when so many people have lost everything they loved. And I had to understand that I need to appreciate where I am right now if I ever want to be able to appreciate where I'm going. You won't be happy going to that next phase of life if you hate the life that you have. And that's something that had to get ingrained into my heart. And it's been a journey. So like I said, I'm not perfect, but feel free to reach out. Feel free to share your story. And I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be a year clean and sober from it. And I don't have any intention or plan on ever going back, because I understand that this decision was bigger than me and it's going to determine a lot of what I'm able to teach my children one day. Not just specifically about this topic, but just about the fact that anything you put your mind and your heart into, you're able to do it. There's nothing stronger than you that you can't overcome if you intentionally choose to be better than it. I didn't want to be in that position as a man where I have my children one day and I'm not able to share any stories of overcoming, any lessons that I've learned along the way. It took me being an adult to be able to appreciate the stories and lessons that my mom shared with me when I was a kid. I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now more than ever. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it added some value, and I hope anything that I talked about brings some level of peace, some level of help to the situation you're dealing with. And on that, we're going to crack this excess. Woo! Cheers to growth. Cheers to making it to that next level of life. And cheers to getting to where it is that we all want to be, which is having a life of peace, love, and transcendence. To leaving a legacy of something that we can be proud of, and to just being that person that we always knew we were meant to be. Cheers.
How does this go? You wanna know. You've never been here before. Go with the flow. We'll take it slow. No need to rush.